Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. And we got a special guest for you today. We got Chris here. We are going to do another sick mod for you here today. We are going to swap out the old, rusty, 20-year-old OEM muffler for this new Borla Pro XS. The XS stands for extra special. The profile of the muffler itself is about half the height, so you're going to get some ground clearance. You're also going to get a more throaty sound out of this muffler, so it's going to change the dynamics of the sound that's coming out of your exhaust. Maybe you're in a situation where the stock muffler has rusted through all the way, depending on where you live in the rust belt, or maybe you just want a different sound on your exhaust as well. The stock muffler has 2.5-inch pipe, and this new Borla that Chris got is 2 1/4. After what he researched, he would have went with 2.5, just like the stock muffler. So we could get some couplings and kind of attach the old pipes to the new pipes rather easily. But no big deal. We're going to show you a little bit more about what we do, and then you can tailor it to your own needs and possibly get the Borla that has 2.5 instead of 2 1/4. Either way though, you're going to need to adapt the different size pipes to each other and do some welding. Or you could get some exhaust clamps and you can tighten it up that way if you don't have access to a welder. So if you got the right size muffler with 2.5-inch pipe, then your 2.5-inch pipe that you get at O'Reilly's or somewhere close by, or maybe even online, would have a flared out portion that you could just slip right over the existing piping, and then everything should fit together real nice, real tight, and either use some clamps or you can weld it on like we're going to do, and that should make your life a lot easier. With all that said, we're going to jump under the rig, we're going to start to cut some stuff up, and we're going to show you how to do this mod. So here's the stock muffler. It's a little bit rusty after 20 years. We sprayed these bolts with a little bit of penetrating fluid. We're hoping that these crack free because our plan is to re-weld this pipe with the flange on it to the new muffler, and we want to use this original flange because it will line up a lot better. So we're going to try to break these free, and then we're going to actually cut this pipe off and hopefully reuse this piece on the new muffler. Alright, so we tightened it back up. We just wanted to make sure that those are going to crack. And next we're going to cut the pipe so we can remove the muffler. We got our Milwaukee situation set up here with a Sawzall, a new blade, and we're just going to cut it off as close to the connection on the muffler as possible to preserve as much pipe as possible in case we need it. So depending on how long your blade is, just be aware that the bottom side of your cabin is right there and you don't want to cut through the floorboard. So just be careful. We're gonna try to snake it off these hangers up here. You can probably pull these off with your hand. You can use a pry bar. Might be a little bit difficult. Maybe some soapy water to help lubricate it. Hercules. Flip the muffler right side up, or I don't know what orientation this is. I think you can just push these isolators right off their hangers. Chris is a strong lad, so he doesn't have any issues with this. If you do, just lubricate the ends, so you should be able to get it off. You get a sick like exhaust, dude. Now that the exhaust is cut out, there's really nothing holding this in place. So now it's dropped down a lot more, and hopefully we can get on the top of these bolts to take them out. The little stubby actually fits.
I'm probably just not going to use this back flange.
just go straight into the pipe and just delete the flange. All right, let's see if we can do that. You want to pull it out then all the way?
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna remove this little hanger and we're gonna pull the whole thing out. All right, we're back to the front. We're gonna harvest this flange, take out those bolts since they were okay to come out. They weren't welded in, which is a good thing. Maybe take some time the night before and hit that stuff with some penetrating oil, maybe even some heat. But we weren't so lucky, so we're gonna go with a plan B. There she is.
I mean, I might want to get rid of the flange anyways. That looks like it's been leaking.
It doesn't look too happy, does it?
Mm-mm.
Is it just stripping it more? Yeah, that thing's not happy.
No way, Jose.
Maybe weld something onto it. But yeah, it's pretty rusted on there. Now what we're gonna do is cut the flange off since we weren't able to save it. And it also looked like there was an exhaust leak there anyways. But because the bolts rounded off, we're just gonna cut the flange off. We have enough tubing to go all the way into this next section. So that's our next plan here. So we're gonna cut the flange off. So now we're gonna fit our series of adapters here with our 45 elbow and this adapter right here.
Now, in hindsight, if I would have gotten the 2.5-inch muffler, you wouldn't need this adapter. You would just be able to get a 2.5-inch 45, and this end would just slip right over this pipe right here. So yeah, I would have gotten a 2.5-inch 45 to the 2.5-inch muffler, 2.5-inch pipe, everything would have been 2.5, and it would have just slipped right over just like that. So now we're gonna clean this up so it's weldable, and we're also gonna clean this end up, take this little bracket off, clean that up and make it weldable as well.
We have an angle grinder with 120 grit flap disc. We got some PPE on, and we're gonna start to clean this pipe up so we can weld onto it. All right, here we go. We're also gonna put this back on again so that we can mock everything up. So like we mentioned, we're gonna weld all this together, but for those of you that don't have a welder or don't have access to a welder, you may wanna do what we're showcasing here, which is cut out some wings on either side. So there's one on the top, one on the bottom here, and you'd cut that out so that this could actually collapse a little bit when you're fitting in the pipe and putting on the pipe clamp. Now you can see here, once it actually fits in and you put a clamp on here, it won't really collapse that much, and you might be able to still pull this out. So by cutting these little portions out where it's zigzagged with the marker there, that part will be cut out, and then when the clamp actually goes onto here, it will collapse this a little bit and it will be a nice solid connection. Chris is a plumber by trade, so he's got some cool tools. Not everybody is gonna have this, so you might just need to cut it with a grinder wheel, but we'll link a tool like this in the video description in case you want to invest in something like this. This thing just makes a super clean, straight cut. That's why it's nice. Breaking out the big boys here. We have this bandsaw, and that's another way that you can cut this pipe, because what we found with the pipe cutter is that it kind of collapsed the pipe a little bit, and then it made it hard to fit the coupling into it. So you have options. You can also use your Sawzall as well, but it just doesn't make as clean of a cut. And you can also use your angle grinder with the cutting disc. So you have options.
We did a test fit and we found that the muffler sits about right here. And since we got the 2 1/4 inch muffler, the original pipe doesn't just slide in here, it's the same diameter about. And so we have to cut this back further so that we can get a straight connection into the muffler, so that we can basically slide this pipe into here and slide it into the muffler, and it'll all line up. If I would have gotten the 2 1/2 inch muffler, this pipe would have just slid right into here and we wouldn't need to cut this pipe back more. So we're gonna cut it right here, and then we're gonna try to slip this in and slip this all together.
So we got everything mocked up and cut. We have our couplers and our pieces of pipe. They're gonna fit in between, and some acetone. We're gonna clean everything up real good. We got everything test fitted. We have our couplers on either end. Took us a little trial and error to get the right lengths of everything, but we got everything situated. It's ready to get tacked in. We see the beginning flange here. We have a coupler, we have a pipe that goes into the inner diameter of the muffler. And if we take a look at the back here, we have the muffler coming out. We have a pipe inside the inner diameter of the muffler. We have a 45 that continues and then goes to the stock exhaust. Everything's just mocked up right now, just sitting there. We're gonna turn on the welder and we're gonna tack things in place. We're gonna disconnect these 2 bolts again. We're gonna remove everything, and then we'll be ready to weld it all in place and put it back in. Before you start welding anything on your truck, it's always good practice to disconnect the negative terminal on your battery. So we're gonna take that off, and then we're gonna start tacking things in place. To make sure we have the right settings for what we're welding as far as thickness of the pipe, we're gonna use this guide here that lets us know what we need to use, and you can measure the metal that you're using if you don't know what it is. But we have the 75 argon, 25 CO2, and we're at 0.35 wiring. So we're gonna put it at 220. So you can see the settings here.
The ground is really interfering with us.
So we ran into a little problem. We're not able to snake this out. We tried some various manipulations and it's not working. If the truck was up on a lift, then the ground wouldn't interfere and we'd probably be able to get it out.
Might be able to.
But still, with all the bends and stuff, it's just really difficult to get it over this cross member. So we're gonna have to break one of these tacks and maybe even do some of the welding underneath the rig here for the final piece. All right, so we had to disconnect those 2, it wasn't coming out, but this is what it looks like. We got these fittings on that end, the original flange. If we would have been able to somehow maintain the flange on the backside, that would have been awesome, because then we could have disconnected this and it would have been so much of a struggle to get out. So let that be a lesson to us. We're going to finalize this component, and then we're gonna fit the hangers. After the hangers are sorted out, we're gonna have to bend them a little bit. Then we're gonna get the last part in, and we're gonna do the rest of that welding underneath the rig. going to the back here. We have a hanger in place, and it comes down, and this is where we're gonna mark it, bend it around. We're thinking that one hanger might be enough. Instead of welding it directly to the muffler itself, we're gonna weld it up where it naturally sits, since it is a little bit shorter than the stock muffler. We're gonna mark it, and we're gonna bend it, and then we're gonna weld it.
Actually,
What's this?
So there's the bent hanger that's gonna go onto the exhaust pipe. We have a magnet holding it together just so it's a little bit more secure. We just slipped in the portion that we got hung up on when we tried to remove this whole assembly. And we snuck that back into the coupling. So we're gonna weld that. And then we see some blue tape here. It's just giving us the right spacing. So when we start to weld everything, it will be the right height. And we also have it connected to the hanger back here, just so everything kind of has its final resting place as we start to get the rest of this welded up. We got the hanger all welded on the way we want it, and you can see we dropped it down one more time just so we had better access to weld the rest of this pipe up before it's finished. So we disconnected the two 14mm bolts from the flange, and now we're ready to weld the rest of this up. So we got it all contorted, all weird angles, so we can get it all side weld around the whole circumference there. So we got the whole thing welded up. Now that we're done welding, we can hook the battery back up. We were checking out the gasket inside there, and it's doing okay. In a perfect world, we would have replaced this. We'll put a link in the video description in case you want to replace yours. So we got all the welds finished up. We have it on this middle hanger, but not on the last hanger. We're getting the 14mm bolts in place. And the last thing to go on will be this hanger, since this gives Chris a little bit more wiggle room. End of the exhaust hanger is on. Everything is welded up. Now's the moment of truth. We're gonna start it up. All right, let's hear it. So we got it idle here after it's been driven around a little bit. It's a little bit louder, but not much, which is nice. All right, so we're all done with this job, and we want to thank Chris for bringing us along. Chris also had a Borla exhaust system on his first gen Tacoma with the 3RZ. Do you notice the difference?
it sounds roughly the same. Not much different, honestly.
It's not overly loud and obnoxious, which is not something that I personally or Chris wants out of their exhaust. The Borla exhaust system that Chris purchased had a diameter of 2 1/4. Knowing what we know now, we probably would have gone with the same as the stock, which is 2.5 inches diameter. And then we could have put some couplings that fit over or in the actual piping itself. It could have simplified the process with the different elbows and stuff that we needed to source from the auto parts store. With all that said, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, do that below. Sick mods.